On November the 3rd, 2023, we set up a small local live meeting on Zoom to talk about this device, Fujinet version for Atari 8-bit. So you can see SIO connectors here. The idea was to try to discover this device from the position of completely green person that has no idea what it is, what it can be used for, and how to use it. This particular example was created by our Polish fellow specialist in electronics, whose nickname is Zaxon, and his fantastic job allowed us to get acquainted with the device. So at the beginning, we connected it to Atari, found out that it's a bit broken, switched to another one. This one worked fantastic. We were able to connect to some servers, downloaded some images, set up the SD card for it, and played a bit with the device. After around 1 hour, our call was joined by Thomas Cherryholmes, one of the co-creators of the whole Fujinet platform. And this started completely different meeting and opened completely different possibilities for us to exchange information about this solution. At this moment, of course, we switched to English, and then we found out that we've got many common interesting things we wanted to talk about, from history of telecommunications in the US and the regulation and splitting AT&T, through fantastic and very interesting Plato education interface, and how it led to co-creation of this small but powerful device, which is called Fujinet. One of the very interesting things that we talked about was possibility of creating this device for yet another set of platforms, such completely unknown in the world devices like Elvro 800 Junior or Cobra One computer that exists, I think, in the numbers lower than 200. It was ever created, and it would be quite interesting if it was possible to make a Fujinet for Elvro and for Cobra. Who knows? Maybe there will be some brave souls that would be able to do it. But for now, I think we should listen to the recording we did during the session and get more information about Fujinet, Plato, and all the other things we talked about during this meeting. Have fun. Okay. Hi, Tom.
Hi, how are you guys doing? Can you hear me?
Fantastic. Yes, we can hear you without any problems. Let's switch to English in this case for a moment. Everybody around will be able to somehow cope with that.
Okay.
So can you tell us a few words about yourself for the people who, don't recognize you?
Well, there's really not much to say, honestly. I have been hacking in the retro computing community now for roughly about 3 decades. But I started work on Fujinet with Moswald back in 2019 because we felt that 8-bit computers needed a better connectivity solution, and definitely the Atari community needed a better connectivity solution than an 850 interface with a serial to TCP, a Lantronix adapter. So
you are at the core team, meaning developing the Fujinet itself, or this especially for one of the platform, for example, the Atari 8-bit or whatever platform.
Well, that's where that's where we started. We started primarily just. We started primarily just to try and have a solution that would work for the Atari 8-bit machines. And of course, somebody asked us basically, well, could we take and adapt this to other platforms? And that just kind of...
Very interesting thing to have it also on other platforms. And what is even more interesting, to make it interact, for example, let's imagine playing a game on Atari 8-bit and Commodore at the same time, the same game, and to just unify really those platforms. I don't know if you are aware of this slightly funny, but still some kind of, let me just show myself because we are recording it. This kind of war between owners of Atari 8-bit computers and Commodore owners.
Oh yeah, I'm very familiar.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. So of course it's a funny kind of word, but still, this is something. And now unify all those platforms with
yes,
Apple II coming, as I understand now.
that is exactly what we're trying to do.
Exactly. So together, having people, I would even create tic-tac-toe or whatever, this kind of simple game, just to allow multiple platformers to try to play the same thing at the same time. Shoutbox is very nice example of using it, but I think the playing a game, it's something that really could unify all those people around. It would be
This is
really
precisely why we have embarked on a number of different projects, including the FujiNet Game Lobby, to take and try and to provide a unifying place for that to happen. The first game that we've actually done to prove the point is a game of poker, 5 card stud, which you can access through the FujiNet Game Lobby. The Atari 8-bit client works really well, and the other clients are coming up very quickly. So we have clients
that's
for the
interesting.
Apple II, for the Commodore 64. I'm writing one for the Coleco Atom, and we're just kind of going down the list as we do it. So because most of us write in C, we can actually take and produce code very quickly to try and to work out all the issues.
Yeah, that's something I really, really like. Coleco and those, I don't know, TRS-80,
Mm-hmm,
TI-99 stuff
mm-hmm.
that might come in future. Those are completely maybe not known platforms in Poland, but not available at all. Nobody played here at maybe
Yep,
some minor
yep.
single entities, but it's popular in the countries it was created. So in the US, for example, it is
Well,
very, very interesting then to have all those.
I do feel I need to I feel I need to mention that there is a team currently working on a version for the ZX Spectrum currently as well,
Oh,
and
that's something.
that particular one is rather interesting because it's built around a generic 8-bit bus interface. So once it works with the ZX Spectrum, it will work with anything with an 8-bit parallel bus, anything with a card slot or a cartridge slot. And then we'll
Yeah.
actually be able to go to a lot more
It will be
platforms.
even easier to. It would be very interesting. I'm talking to Kaz now to be able to port it also to completely, magical and unknown platform to the rest of the world, like Polish Elvro 800 Junior
Yeah.
machine or this stuff like this, because it would be then possible. I don't know how to connect. Maybe through Syria port, it would be easy on that particular machine, but that's something really interesting. Kaz, what was the name of the computer that was made only in few copies in Poland? We had also meeting about this one.
Maybe not few copies, maybe more, but probably you think about Cobra.
Cobra, exactly, Cobra machine. And
Cobra
having
One.
Fujinet for Cobra did would
Mhm.
be interesting. I would even, invest my time to do it. I'm not a very good specialist in any kind of those things. I'm not even a programmer per se. I'm working in IT, but as DevOps. But I would support guys doing this kind of stuff.
That would be something. I mean, for each of these platforms, what we really need is someone to come in and be the champion for that platform, to take and either, uh, to do a huge chunk of the engineering work or to help coordinate others to do the engineering work to take and make that possible. The good thing is that the way that we've done things in FujiNet, we're basically, the majority of our work happens on Discord. And
Yep.
it's basically there's just a bunch of us that are actively working on the different platforms, doing the different bring ups. We're all off in our own little corners for a bit, but we always kind of come into the middle and show what's happening, what's working. And whenever one of us has an issue, we ask the others and basically try to get help to try and take and move things along. And it's been a model that's worked extremely well. And because of it, right now, we have roughly about a dozen platforms right now that are currently doing bring ups, all at different speeds and all in their own time. But our function, my function at least, is to try and help get these people what they need so that they can take and do their respective bring ups.
Yeah, what is most important, I can say, from API perspective, is that you've got standardized protocol. So this TNFS, as I understand, that
Mhm.
it's easy to use, meaning and it's common for all those platforms just to use. So it's much easier to start, and you don't
Yes.
have to, recreate the whole thing from scratch each time. This is
Yes.
very important because you can build on that and then just continue. Yeah.
Well, there's two sides to this. TNFS, of course, we pulled in from the SpectraNet community. Actually, that came from the ZX Spectrum people, and we used it because it was very easy to use. But we develop our own things when we need them, of course. But because we have this really powerful microcontroller that can do a whole bunch of stuff. It can handle the modern web. It can handle any modern web API. It can handle TLS, SSL, anything you can throw at it. You can do OAuth. You can do OAuth with it. You can talk all of these different things. So not only can we have all of these things that if we need to make them, we can, we also have the ability for these machines to interact on the modern web as well, and to build protocol adapters to take and talk to all these modern services.
And the most important thing, we have to just repeat it each time we are talking about this solution. It's completely open. So
yes.
The thing is that this particular device was created by our fellow, engineer working on this stuff, and he made the whole thing on his own. Of course, you buy parts from China. That's obvious, and built all over the place. But the final product I received from him, he was printed for me, and he could just provide me without violating any kind of agreements and stuff like this. Because let's be frank, looking at those ATR's images of this original software sometimes is completely gray area. But what is most important here, we are able to provide now the first software, and the hardware itself is as open as it is only possible.
Completely agree. So, I mean, we try, as far as being open, so that people understand, we have a set of GitHub repositories that are all under FujiNet Wi-Fi at GitHub, and they are for everything under the sun, from the firmware itself, which is what runs on the ESP32 microcontroller itself. They are for the hardware designs, which include not only schematics, but also build of materials, Gerbers, anything that you need to take and build the boards, and any applications that we actually take and make go in their own repository as well. And because this is multi-platform, you get examples of an application being written for several different platforms at the same time. So you get kind of a Rosetta Stone to see how to take and bring an application across to all these different platforms. And there are lots of other repositories as well. We upstream the SpectraNet repository, so we can have the TNFS code, so we can help push changes to them, and just more. There's a whole bunch of different repositories that we keep there on GitHub now and forever. That's not going to change. And from our perspective here too, we really just want people to use these things. We want them to be useful. We want people to use them. We want people to make them better. So we don't ask for any licensing or anything whatsoever from anybody who makes these things. We want vendors to make them. And conversely, if FujiNets are out in your area, it conversely does become your responsibility to just take and tug on the shoulder of the vendor and say, hey, can you make some more of them, please?
Yeah, for user, the more popular the platform, there is a higher chance of people just investing their time and doing new, interesting stuff that it's not yet there even imagined even.
Yes, and it has paid off better than we have ever hoped, because I've done, the last time I did a count for how many of them that were approximately out there, just from rough vendor totals, for the Atari one only, there are close to about 5,000 units that have been made and sold to people since October of 2020. So
that's a very good result, taking into account that it's not the cheapest piece of equipment. It's half of the price of used Atari box like this one. And still this is gives you so huge opportunities that it's even for me hard to at this moment even explain the possibilities. It's just an open box, but getting into those utilities, one thing that is completely unknown in Poland, but for example, we talked a moment about this, it allows to recreate stuff that no longer exists, but was at some point, especially in the US, quite interesting platform and huge platform. I'm talking about the Plato education system.
Yes,
That's something
as well.
Yes, that's something I'm interested in to just see how it works on Atari or even on PC. It's completely secondary because it works all over the place. But you can then experience it the way it was created for Atari. Or Atari was just one of the possible interfaces. It was for Commodore, and also special interfaces created just for this, special boxes, terminals, or whatever you call it. And history of Plato is very interesting, but reading the history, listening on, I don't know, on some podcasts and stuff like this, but experiencing now, not through the, watching a video or stuff like this and then pictures and descriptions, but also trying to use it in real world, that's something completely different. And to some extent, Plato is the first proto idea of not even BBSs, even something that gets close to the internet. And some years later, it was on different scale, but Minitel in France and stuff like this. It's very interesting thing that you can, the Minitel now, you just, I don't know. I have to check if there is some kind of
there is a burgeoning Minitel network that some hobbyists have put together and are maintaining, much the same way that a handful of us are. There are two Plato systems that are currently out there right now. There's mine, which is errata.online, and cyber1.org. And the Plato systems that are actually running are actual Plato systems. They're the real thing. They're running on an emulation of a supercomputer that was built in the late 1970s by Control Data. The Control Data Cyber 17865, a very big machine, which can now fit in the teeniest, tiniest corner of a PC that I currently have in the lab. And that's where it's been running for the last 6 years. And the thing about it, and especially with Plato, is that Plato had decades of use before it was finally turned off. I mean, decades of use.
The companies that there is, of course, that's usually the string of companies that are descendants of the original solution. Of course, the current things that they're offering have nothing to do with the original thing. But the original thing was made for education, and it still contains stuff that is useful today in education, because many of those things did not change. I don't know, English lessons or basic of geometry, mathematics and stuff like this. This is the same stuff you can still use for even teaching your kids, if you have kids that speak English, of course.
And they did a fantastic job with it. I mean, just to kind of give a sense of perspective here, when Control Data started selling Plato as a complete package to institutions and whatnot, they had a lesson catalog of about 16,000 different lessons that spanned across the globe, from anything from high school biology to, and I kid you not, how to run your own nuclear reactor. So
there was a guy that even set it up, chain reaction somewhere in the US. Yes, it's a history, of course, not related to Plato. But okay, my question is, I'm interested in the nuclear power, but we have no nuclear plants in Poland. This is the country around that doesn't have any, and the history is long and interesting about it. But okay, one question, because I've got this thing running. You think I can connect to Plato somehow and try to use it?
Yes.
Okay, let me just.
All you have to do.
Let me just switch. You can see my screen. Yeah.
So I have go to apps. Go to apps.errata.online.
So I have to create a new host because I don't. No, it's online. It's there. Okay.
The default apps. I see it right there. So Atari 8-bit, and go to the comms folder.
Comms.
Yes. And you'll see right there down at the very bottom.
ATR.
Plato. Yes, that's it.
Okay, Plato, and
this is literally all you have to do, because this particular implementation
with basic or without basic?
No, without. It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Okay, so I'm just pressing Option and let's see.
It doesn't use all that much RAM. So let's see. So it will boot up and you won't have to do anything because it will immediately connect to Errata Online.
That's fantastic. Okay. And that's the power of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, joystick I've got. connecting. Joystick works. Okay.
Yeah, joystick works as a pointer. Yeah.
Okay. So that's I want to just explain to anybody listening the power of the solution. You've got FujiNet. I have completely zero idea about using Plato and the whole solution. Sorry for my accent saying Plato, but in Polish it's Plato.
Like the Greek.
Yeah, exactly. So I have no idea how it runs. Let's imagine I have no idea. I just heard about it and listened to the history. It was fantastic over the span of 20 years, how it evolved and then disappeared completely. And now using this device and just few clicks, you can just experience it on your own. Enter your username and press next.
Go ahead and just use guest and guest. You can see it right there.
Okay. Now press next. Next.
Yeah, return. That's the return.
Return. Okay. Mm-hmm. And okay, now everything I click gives a double sound noise from this. So send it back and then coming back to me. Yep.
Okay.
Okay. One enter. Yeah. Now preparing lesson.
So this is the main menu right here. Now, before you do anything else, I'm gonna point you to tap your option key. Okay.
Help.
All right. So there is your Plato keyboard right there. Plato had a big keyboard with a lot of special keys.
Yes.
And so we had to take and map them over onto keys on the Atari here. And you'll see for most of them, they're mnemonic. A for answer, B for back, C for copy, D data. Next is, of course, enter. And you can hit this at any time to basically see which key you're supposed to press. There are a couple of exceptions because Plato has the concept of a Control-Shift combination. And as you know, on the Atari, certain key combinations can't be pressed in three characters. So I had to take and do alternate keys for those, which are the shift combinations that are on the right-hand side.
I will be listening to this video again multiple times when I try to just play and use it, because I really want to get into and just experience this.
Yeah. So just hit the option key again, and you go back to where you were. Okay.
Kuba, can you make an image a little bit sharper?
Image is
a little bit closer, maybe.
Maybe I could just move the camera closer. And we can just look at it like this. Of course, this is completely stupid way of doing it, because I should have, some kind of solution to grab the video directly from Atari. But what the hell?
RetroTink.
Yes, I don't have any at this moment, because I didn't even. The idea was to just play with device and do some kind of repair, this kind of stuff, not to grab the live video from this. That's why I don't have anything connected, prepared, and stuff like this. But for the next time, when I will be trying to make the presentation in Polish, and then I will just probably prepare this kind of stuff. Okay.
So, of course. You can either use the letters to take and select menu options, or you can use the pointer to take and make selections as well. The Plato terminals were kind of unique in that they were basically touch screens.
That's something interesting. I haven't recorded this in my mind that there were touch screens. I remember that there were multiple different, revisions of the whole terminal.
Yes.
With them, the technology that went further on from the original that were just giants, to the more modern that you could just maybe not move around, but were not never made to be luggable. They were always to be installed somewhere, but still were much more easier to install on a regular desk without additional support for it. That's the thing, because originally the first revisions were more than 100 kilograms, as I understand. But they always had big screens, a lot of graphics. They were, I think, they were even container colors.
It depends, and that really depends. The classic Plato terminal Had a resolution of 512 by 512. This was in the mid 1970s, mind you. The terminal screens themselves were plasma screens. They were actually the very first implementation of a flat plasma display. The patent was literally granted to the Plato team for the purpose of building
So it was
this.
yellow.
Yeah, like light orange. You can gas plasma. So it's
Exactly.
the picture element was neon. So yeah, it's a bright orange. So what we're doing here with this particular terminal here is that we're sizing this down from the 512 Plato display and shrinking it to something that can be displayed on the Atari at 320.
Because we've got limitation. And the 10D comes from
Now,
what?
yeah, that's another computer manufacturer. If you go ahead and hit Control D, it will refresh the screen and you'll see a different one. I made different logos for all the different systems. Amiga, and yeah, if you had color, you could see the bouncing ball,
Okay, I see.
Apple, etc.
That's okay. Now I understand because this is the extra history we don't have. Now it fits the screen the way it should be. Yep. Because just for somebody who didn't notice, we are running it on Atari 8-bit machine. So yeah. Okay. So now I get it. Just to reiterate it or just repeat the same information again. This was made at the time to be available on multiple platforms. And Atari was one of the first, I think, 8-bit machines that got originally at the time access to this.
Yes,
Because there was agreement. There was direct agreements between platform and
yeah,
Atari.
That one was kind of interesting because as it happened, one of the researchers that worked at Plato's birthplace, which is the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign in the CERL lab, was a man named Vincent Wu, and he left CERL and went to Atari. And as part of that whole thing, he started working on, in his own time, a Plato terminal for the Atari 8-bit. And when management got wind of it, they talked to Control Data. That they tried to get additional system support to try and make it a first-class terminal, and they worked on it. Between the oldest version of the source code that I actually have dates back to November of 1981, and they finished it in the spring of 1984, so March or April of 1984. And as part of this whole process, a whole bunch of things had to happen. Of course, you see a lot of everything here is built up of lines. And so there's a lot of line drawing that's going on, but you also see a lot of text being output as well. And that text is being output by a font. And the Plato terminals themselves have two fonts, one that's built into the ROM and one that you download from the connection on the fly. Different programs can redefine character sets as they need to. So one of the challenges of the Atari terminal was to take and create a way to shrink down the character set that was being downloaded, which was originally 8 by 16 characters, and shrink that down to 4 by 6 so that it could fit onto the Atari display using some image processing techniques, some image interpolation, some threshold interpolation.
So it wasn't straightforward. It's very important. It wasn't straightforward putting it because you couldn't just use different size of fonts on screen on Atari, because Atari text mode has very strict setup. So this uses completely different idea and approach to the screen. So it's always slower. But at the time, it wasn't any kind of problem because the connections and you've got when you logged in through the modem also was really slow. So
the typical connection to a Plato to the Plato system was typically at 1200 bits per second.
So at the time, it was already fast because the basic modem for Atari was 300, I think, bits per second. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the terminals had 1200 baud modems on them.
So it was quite fast. I think the first Commodore modem that was 1200
300 per second.
it was 84 or 85.
Yeah, a little earlier than that, but you're talking about the Commodore 1600 series, the auto, the ones that pop into the user port.
Exactly. And in case of Atari, the first connections were done through the joystick ports. Yep.
Yeah, well, and it was the first Atari's first modem was the 830, and that was a rebranded Novation Cat plugged into the 850 via the serial port, and then they made the 835, which was based on a National Semiconductor modem chip, and then they replaced that with the 1030, which was based on a TI modem chip.
But it wasn't audio coupled; it was already
direct connect. Yeah, the 835 was direct connect, and so was the 1030. Yep.
Yeah. Because this was madness related to this very specific thing in the US when AT&T was blocking direct connections to its network with unqualified equipment.
Yes.
At the time in Poland, nobody really had any kind of this kind of stuff, and if they had, you could just connect it directly, but you could just burn it down because of the quality of the signal, incompatible voltages, and everything being really analog. But in the US, AT&T was really strictly regulating any kind of access. You couldn't buy in the shop your own phone and connect it to the.
There was. I can actually speak to this because I'm very familiar with what happened here, especially in the US. So basically what happened was, AT&T was extremely skittish about what you could connect up to their systems. Now, mind you, that until the massive deregulation that happened after the breakup of AT&T in 1983, most people who had telephones at this point in the United States were renting them directly from Bell Telephone.
You were renting a phone, which
renting their phone.
I don't know, $2 if you still have it, because a lot of people already don't have a regular hardline at home. But you had to rent the device, which was just set off a few cables inside. There was no electronics inside.
Yes, you rented your phone, but you also paid for your line, and there were a number of other charges that were also attached to that. Now, if you wanted to plug something else up to the line, initially this was not possible. However, the Carter phone decision that was first raised in 1973 and finally came to a head and was resolved in 1979, early 1980, AT&T begrudgingly allowed other things to be plugged up to the Bell Telephone network. But, and here's the big but, if you look at some of the earliest direct connect modems, the ones that are not acoustically coupled, but the earliest direct connect modems, the Hayes 8810, the Hayes Model 101 is a good example of this. You had to use a special device that was essentially a fixed filter bank that plugged directly up to the punch block that came to your premises, to your house. And that was called a DAA box. It was a discretionary access box. And you had to take that, and then you had a connector that went out from the DAA box to your special device, your modem or whatever. And Hayes,
the idea was to secure the network from the
protect the network from voltage transients.
Okay, out of curiosity, was this monopolistic, let's say it was, idea and limiting this access, apart from generating higher income to the company, was also translated to the high quality of the whole network, and it was really stable. There were no issues whatsoever. The audio quality was high and so on, or not so really.
It was really, that was the thing. It really didn't do that much. Part of the Carter phone decision was ultimately proving that the paranoia that Bell had in the first place was unfounded. And so, but the reaction that Bell took and the trajectory that Bell took to actually implement the terms of the Carter phone settlement, ultimately, it was years before we actually had before we actually had modems that could directly connect up to the network. I mean, to let you know how quickly it happened. The Hayes first modem, the 88101, required a DAA box. Their S100 version of their micro modem did not, which that was released the very next year. So that was 1980. And by 1981, Hayes had already released the Hayes Smart Modem, which literally had a direct connection that could go directly up to the wall, no additional boxes, no termination needed, that sort of thing. So it was, yeah,
it was really artificial, in fact. Yeah,
yeah.
You had this possibility thanks to deregulation. In Poland, deregulation.
This was one of the few. This was one of the few cases that I honestly. This is one of the few cases where I honestly say that deregulation actually did the right thing here. But that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah, that's a different story. But just to put it in the perspective of Poland, being in a communist country and just exiting it, or because the period of 8-bit computers is communist era ending at 1989, and computers showing up in bigger numbers, especially Atari and Commodore was too expensive, but it also reached. But I think Commodore is slightly less common in Poland. It was a guy that bought it directly from Jack Tramiel and imported to Poland and sold in the very interesting idea, which is called Organization for Internal Export, called FEVEX.
Yes.
And it was sold in Poland only. You could buy it having US dollars or a special, translation of US dollars, which was called, which was our own internal invention. And it was very, very high price of $125 on something like this. For Poland, it was, amount of money you earn in half a year at the time. So, but still people were buying it because it was something that allowed you to feel the freedom and possibility to touch those technologies. And because we were so delayed with access to this stuff, it was still popular in beginning of 90s.
Yep.
Of the 90s. Yep. And it ended 1995. And this was the time I put my 8-bit computer to the storage, but never thrown away because it was considered so expensive that everybody was even afraid to open and tinker it, apart from some very small number of people that decided to do so. So, yeah. And at the time, Plato was already non-existent and not so important. And
it had already transitioned to Novanet by this point.
Exactly. Yes. So I heard about it only half a year ago. That's interesting story. When somebody made a YouTube video about the history of the whole thing, which directed me then to the set of additional videos that I managed to, to get acquainted with it, and now I can just touch it. That's something that's the progress. So I'm very happy that I bought a Fujinet, and just because this Plato experience. Okay, maybe let's go back to the thing I'm showing on the screen all the time now, because I think we should set up some meetings, because there are people and on which we could just just talk about anything, random things. I don't mind completely, but let's just try to show some fun stuff, as the letter F suggests, about the Plato. So it's the thing that you what is the thing that we should maybe just show to people around, because there are people asking already in the chat.
Well, if you go ahead and go to games, you can look and you can see these are the games that I have currently up on the menu, and it's
typing C. Mm-hmm. I could also use probably my
the
cursor.
And there are I need to put the other versions up as well. I made other versions of the terminal that can use, for example, the Koala Pad, or that can use an ST or Amiga mouse as a pointer, that sort of thing.
I would like to point out that on top here we've got your local time.
Yep, and
server.
the reason the date is so funny is literally because this system does not have any patches for Y2K whatsoever. So where
Yeah, so the year, it's obvious. I don't mind the year, but it's saying that it's 4 p.m. now. So
yeah, because this thing is running in Central Standard Time in the US. That's the time.
yeah.
That's the time of the system.
Yeah. That's why I want to point it out that it's not completely random hour, because it fits the 24 seconds. It fits roughly the time that is here. It's 10 p.m. of course, but still okay. Which is the one we should probably show the first?
Let's see here. So you can I'm trying to think, what can we show here first?
We don't need to really play through or whatever. I just want to then everybody who is interested will just click it through, but something that we could just show for a very short moment looks nice.
Yeah, we'll just hit F for checkers real quick.
Okay, checkers.
Or samples real quick, yeah. So what's actually happening? Okay, so it's saying play a game of checkers against Plato, press data to play. So hit Control D to confirm it.
The help is under option. Just to remind you.
Help is under
checkers, so it's done.
Right now is it's actually taking and downloading the character set for the checkers pieces so that it can use them. And you can see it's already starting to use it. It's using it for the title, it's using for the keys here, next to play, help for rules, etc. So we can go ahead and hit next to play.
Next is just return, yeah?
Yeah, just enter. Yeah, next is enter.
That's a bit of fight to load it and show the screen. Yep. And you can select Cibis is in this case.
Cibis is the computer. Yes.
Cibis is the computer. So I can just type 1 to have me first. And move. Okay. So enter piece and arrow. So I can
enter piece and arrow. So the way that the arrow keys were set up on the Plato terminal, it's WAD and X for up, down, left, and right, with Q, E, Z, and Z and C as the diagonals. So let's say you want to start with a particular piece. We can do all the pieces are numbered. So let's see, 9. Let's do 9E.
9?
9E.
Okay, you type which one you want and then a direction. Starting with S in the S the central. So if I want to go up, so it will be E. 9E. Okay, interesting way of addressing. Completely not logic for the first very start. Okay, and we can see.
So there we go. And of course, you can use your pointer as well to take and select a piece as well.
Let's try. It's much more. Yep.
And
one click and second click.
Yep.
Yes, it works. It's much better.
There you go.
Of course, because with this addressing, it's painful. And one click works fine. Of course, there is no confirmation, but the idea was to use, your finger originally, probably.
Yes. Yeah. The idea was to use your finger originally.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there we go. At any time when you want to take an exit, you can do shift stop. And the way you do shift stop in this case, if you tap the option, you'll see it.
Option. I'm pressing option to show the help.
Yes. So you see Control S is stop.
Control S is stop.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you hit Shift Control S to stop, that will literally drop you out.
So I have to press Control S or Shift Control
Shift Control S, yes.
Shift Control S, and it should be press data to continue working or Shift Stop to sign off. So I have to again Shift Control S. Yep.
If you want to sign out, yes. If you want to sign out, if you want to, that will disconnect.
This is so this will disconnect me completely and data. So
that will throw you back to that'll throw you back to the menu.
Okay, I see. So
Control D.
Control D is data. Control D. Okay. Yes. You have to learn. It's very good. I have got you here because now I can just understand it.
Yeah. There are other things too, but they actually require an account. For example, Airfight is it is a first-person flight simulator that's multiplayer. Avatar is one of the very first MMORPGs.
How to get account? Shall we contact you to get account?
Yeah, if you go to the website errata.online, there's a sign-up form, and then I take and create the account, send you back an email.
Okay, that's very important information that you can get account. Of
Yes.
course, if there will be 100,000 people asking you for accounts, it's not possible to fulfill. But I don't suppose there is so many people interested in
Well,
this at this stage. So
yeah,
it's still possible for you to.
I don't have an issue of being swamped too much. Just do it, and I will create the account. You should receive my typical turnaround time is about 3 to 4 hours at
I will
most.
switch to computer so I can show it. I need the correct mouse. Yes, I got it. We'll open some kind of browser window. Okay. So, what should be the address?
Errata.online.
Yeah.
Okay. That's it. And you'll actually see another thing too. That's part of it as well. I'll show you when we get through with. So there are two buttons right here: sign up and log in. So if you click sign up, that is quite literally the sign up form.
Okay.
That's it.
That's what I'll do in a
Yep. And that's all. It's just you.
What are the groups possible? Okay, I want Atari in this case, yeah. What is
Now,
alpha?
that tells you what this is. Yes.
Yeah. I'm reading. Lesson development. Okay, at this stage, probably I'm not qualified enough.
Yeah, the system has a complete development tool so that users of the system can make their own lessons, which are programs that run on the system.
Okay, so that's the next stage for me, maybe at this moment.
So, okay, sign up's been processed. And now I wonder if I can share my screen.
Yes, you can share your screen in Zoom if you only want.
Let's see. Hold on a second.
The only thing I need to do is to unpin my. Okay, it should immediately.
Okay, can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. Hopefully,
you're actually going to see how I take and process this.
We can feel your pain. Yep.
So, okay.
You've got pterm for that, yeah.
This is pterm from cyber1.org, and I am going to, pardon me here.
This is how it should look like, yeah.
Yeah, let me go ahead and see. I just need to.
Remember, we see your screen, and it's recorded, so if you want then later on to be cut.
No, big deal.
Yes, that is my request. Hit and destroy. I like
so, at this point, let's see, Jacob D.
Yes, Jacob D. It's the one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So somebody else also made one right on top of you there.
So you log into the platform.
So what I'm doing right now is I'm going into the system side of the system side of the platform, and I'm going to go into the Atari group here. Create.
And you will just type in. Yep.
Now, when I create a user, it doesn't, I don't set a password. So it's your responsibility the first time you log in to actually set a password.
To do it as quickly as possible, especially now.
So now that that's there, now I just set your permissions.
And so we are using the original interface. Yeah.
Yes. That's the author interface. So, okay. Now we've done that. Now I will take since you just did this, I'm not going to send you back an email. So there.
Don't. You don't need to, because I will just immediately try to log in. I just need to.
Okay, go ahead. You should be able to now. Let me kill the share. Stop.
Yes, I
STO.
now force my monitor to switch back to. And it's not so obvious because this monitor is Hewlett Packard, and I've got two things connected to it, and the computer takes over, and now it cannot even see. Ah, yes, it switched finally.
So now, if you hit Shift Control S, now the Shift Stop, you can
Shift Stop to exit.
Mhm.
Shift S, so it will log me off.
Now you can immediately log back in. So just take and press next to log back in.
Two things at the same time, looking in the opposite parts of the screen. So next is enter. So return in the world of Ataris.
Yeah.
Come on, it's loading, and now I can just
And I will log in as well.
Username and enter your user group from Atari. And now it will tell me that choose a secret password that you will remember. Do not, yes, the usual. Any limitations about the characters you can use?
Keep it alphanumeric. So letters and numbers.
You are still here with us? Because I can hear you.
Am I? Yeah, can you not hear me?
Let's imagine that there are no specific limitations.
Oh, shit.
Oh, I have to hide the camera so nobody
can hear you.
password. Remember this password. Press next. Okay.
Okay, did you lose me here? Or can
Now I should be able to even do. Okay, let me just go to catalog.
Uh-oh. Yeah, there's tons of them.
Subjects. Let's try to. I don't know. Math. Check it out. We've got full education stuff related to math. Linear programming. Okay. Linear programming 7. Linear regression, statistical analysis for psychology. Liquid-liquid separation. Solvent extraction. Lithology. Livestock, horses, terminology for veterinary medicine. Let's go. Horses.
Can you hear me?
No idea where I'm going, but you too can understand horse talk. Let's understand horses. Copyright date 1975. If you can read it. This activity presents a drill on the jargon of the horse stable and presents 71 terms or phrases describing conformational faults and lamenesses. Choroby koni, proszę bardzo. Quizzes are included for the self-assessment. Okay, thank you so much for your support. And
No problem.
I think we will just contact you in future if you would like to do another meeting. See you.
Okay. Yay.
No, your audio is currently off.
Oh, man. What the hell's going on here? It's like it just suddenly decided it wasn't going to. All right. I guess I will switch to my laptop, but who knows if this will work.
We cannot hear you, Tom. I don't know what's up. Are you muted or not?
But I think we can hear Thomas. But Jakub.
No, you are muted. No, unmuted and no audio comes out.
Try that again. 1, 2, 3. Hello?
Shift next, shift back. And option, shift next,
Yeah, so shift return.
back. I'm blind. Where's next? Shift return. Okay. Okay, next to move. Okay, I want this veterinary medicine. I'm very interested in it. Okay, so you two can understand horse talk. 1. Press the letter of the option you wish to select. Further information. A.
Wait.
Estimated, open-ended. Okay.
Wait. Press lab. You need to press the lab.
Motion. Control L to start the lesson. Vision of the team. Wait a moment, please. Horse talk.
With Pashto.
Patatai.
This lesson is a drill in what a foreign language for many veterinary students. The venerable jargon of the stable.
Yeah.
Lameness in horns.
Yes.
It's based on a regular book. Okay.
One, 2, 3. I am outputting. You just can't hear me.
And there is full guide. Everything is described. And you can really use to learn. We can hear you or we cannot. So I don't have audio. What's up?
Yeah, you're just messed up.
Słyszysz nas?
No. Because I cannot hear anything.
Słyszysz nas?
Did I break something? With my computer? Okay, I cannot hear you. That's explanation. How did it happen? I've got some ideas.
Włącz uszy.
Now, can you say something?
Tak, możemy. Raz, dwa, trzy.
Bla, 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 bla.
Raz, dwa, trzy. Teraz was słyszę. Okay. I can hear you again.
Okay. Yeah. Hello.
It was my issue because I've got so many cables on my desk now and I'm using my headset, and if I pull it, then it can get disconnected. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we can learn about horses now. Really want to. Okay, if I want to exit,
Just
option, so it's Control Shift S. Yep.
yeah.
Fantastic.
Control data. Yeah. Control data. Continue working. There's all sorts of crazy stuff.
So it's illogical for the first when you try to use it like this, and when you don't have this guide to enter.
Yes,
this
guide made the screen.
Yeah,
and,
but do we have a guide? Because without you now, I would get immediately, tired of trying to find out what I'm doing. So the question is, do we have some kind of guide, written or video guide?
Yeah,
these first steps.
I basically, when I was first doing this particular service, I made all sorts of videos on YouTube. If you look for Errata online, you'll see videos not only of me going through, but multiple talks showing how to go through the system, etc. And on the website itself, there should still be those original videos as well. Let me take a look.
Okay, so maybe it's a good idea. I will then, sit down with guys and try to polish a version of some basics, because this system is completely unknown in Poland. So that's why it is interesting to, to share.
It was completely unknown in the United States too. I mean,
it's 30 years when it's down. Yeah, it was down.
At its peak, Plato had about 50,000 users. And it was available to a very, very, very lucky set of people.
And you have to also say that it was expensive to use when it
Well,
was not subsidized by the, I don't know, university,
correct.
school, or whatever.
Correct on all counts. And it was, I mean, the terminals were, mere mortals couldn't get Plato terminals. They were $5,000 a piece, and you
We're
had
talking about the $5,000 in 70s or 80s. It is completely different money.
Yes. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to use. But here, if I may grab the screen again,
Please do.
Okay, let me take, because I want to show a couple of things that might not be evident here. Go ahead, share. Now, I'm going to use my terminal here. First and foremost, one of the nice things that we have here, if we go to Errata Online, you've got, of course, videos with the demonstration videos right here.
Okay.
You have a text section full of information on the protocol, example source code, etc., how to use it, all that nifty stuff. But if we go and just versions of terminals for all sorts of different platforms, just but if we go all the way up, we'll see that there's a login button here. I did a JavaScript terminal.
So it can be on the right, everything is written there.
Yes. And
I just love it. That's fantastic.
So
it's fantastic that I was talking about this when we started today the meeting, that there was this kind of stuff, and it was interesting, and I had no idea that we will meet you and we will be able to just talk about it, and it's live running.
Here's another. I'll do another one here since I'm logged in as myself here and you're logged in. Let's see here. I'm going to go to Avatar. And we'll just do a little run through on Avatar here. Nice little splash screen here. Adventure game. It saves your character. It keeps all of this long running here. We can go into it. And it's a long running game. Maze. Move around, do things. Go upstairs, go to town, pick up items, that sort of thing. So it's, and we got help that shows you what all you need to do. So it's literally an early MMORPG.
Exactly. This is what I want to say. This is RPG, MMO, text style, before even it was invented in text mode on Unix.
Yes.
Text stuff that was so popular, and then people occupying terminals and computers all over the world in the universities, and then they were just thrown away because real people wanted to do real work, and there was always a fight over this, even in Poland.
So, and now we got Air Fight. Now notice what you're about to see here. Note the date at the bottom of the screen here. That's 1976, and this was programmed.
Atari 2600 was not even planned at the time.
Nope. Well, they in 1976 they had already done the initial feasibility prototypes over at Cyan, and at this time J Miner had already attached to the project, and they were taking the big breadboards that they had built over at Cyan and they were shrinking it down into a VLSI chip. And the first prototypes for the 2600 were actually available in the spring of 1976. And the thing was the games started showing up in late 1976, early 1977, and that's when they started hiring some of the other programmers to do that work.
And this program is already in productive mode running.
Yes, this program is already here. It's already been used, etc. Now,
this is not the first edition.
Now, I point this out specifically because Bran Fortner was a grad student at UIUC. There was another grad student also at UIUC at that time, a man by the name of Bruce Artwick, who would go on to form the company Sublogic, which would produce the Flight Simulator, Flight Simulator 2,
and so on.
and so on. Eventually,
that goes on still
Simulator.
today. Yeah.
That guy. So he saw this.
This was the very beginning of it.
He saw this and wondered if he could do it on a micro.
And then J Miner wanted to have it on real machine. That's why Amiga was created.
That was why Ham. He saw the Evans and Sutherland's flight simulators, and he wanted that's a whole story in and of itself. So here's the deal. I really have to point out something here. The machine that this is running on is a supercomputer by the standards of 1979. Let me give you some of the specs. This machine has a 60, that is 60-bit word. Okay?
Yep.
That's its register size.
It completely doesn't make sense from the current structures of machines, because this the size of the registers and everything at the time was not determined by the being at the power of 2 like it's now or whatever else. It was related to the purpose of the machine. For example, if it was accounting, it had to hold the typical numbers that go through the bankings and so on and so on.
Yep.
And 60 comes from probably because of, I don't know, scientific calculations or whatever.
Yeah, that's part of it. That's a big part of it. The other part of it is that the character type on this machine is actually 6 bits long. So it's 6-bit BCD. So 10, one 60-bit word holds 10 characters. So, and there's 1 mega word. There's 1 mega word of memory, roughly equivalent to about 8 megabytes of memory. That's on this machine. Okay, it's a very powerful machine. It has 24 dedicated I/O processors and 2 central processors. This particular
those I/O processors were not made for accessing hard drives and stuff like this. They were for the terminals.
They were for the hardware and for the terminals, depending
for everything. Okay,
different ones. And in fact, here I'll peel back the curtain even more here, and you can literally see. Sorry, damn it! Don't do that.
It's just a computer. It will do whatever it wants.
I'm getting off of KDE. So, okay, here we go. This is my DSD display on my machine. This is quite literally the operator console. We see right here the I/O processors and the 2 central processors and what they're currently running. So that's what I see on my side of things, what the operator sees on their operator console.
How many parallel connections it can support?
Well, we actually had to do some modifications to the system code, but
of course,
I can realistically support about 200 simultaneous connections.
That's something. Even from at the time it was very huge, and now it looks just like significant number even of traffic going on for those to support this with the normal speed.
Yep. So because of changes, because of things that were added onto NOS, the operating system that this machine runs at the end of its life,
has nothing to do with Unix, as I can support. I can think of it that it's its own internal software operating system written especially to support this hardware. Yep.
Yes. And there were they added support for TCP/IP. They added support for all those. That was some of the last things that they did for this operating system before they sunset it. So anyway,
So when it was sunsetted in this case, because TCP/IP is quite modern invention from perspective of the system.
Yeah, the build of NOS that I'm running here is version 2.8.7, which went out the door in 1994.
Exactly. So okay, so it was kept alive for significantly longer than you would expect from the typical system from 8-bit or 16-bit computers.
Yes. So now I'm going into Airfight here, and I mentioned all of this before because when I'm about to show you what we're actually going to do, this is a multiplayer game, and you can have up to 16 players on each side on each team. So if I'll choose a squadron, and then I'll choose a plane. I'll choose the F-16, and we get some statistics here, basically with weight. So this determines how much of fuel versus munitions that you can put onto the plane. So get myself a call sign, and I will just kind of split this up. I don't know, something like that, and put 10 missiles in here. Sure. So now I'm literally on the ground, and I have a control panel right here. I can use the arrow keys to move the yoke. I can use other keys here to take and move the rudders, etc. But I'm going to take and set my flaps to 25 degrees. Of course, you can hit the help key to get all the special keys here. Turn my throttle up, and then I will hit my next key here to get off the ground. Now it's only doing the update when I take and hit my next key here. But we can see even at this particular point, this is basically a full-blown dogfight simulation that you can have with multiple players and whatnot. It is slower on the older machines, but it still is reasonably playable. But it's another example of what we have here. You have the two teams, you have the two airports, and you'll have the various planes flying around that you can go take and shoot at. Control D, okay, finish that. Then let's see what else. God,
we have to point out two things. We are playing with games like this. I don't know, Tomahawk Simulator for Atari 8-bit and stuff like this. We have to point it out that this thing works for any terminal you will connect to it. Of course, with limitations of particular terminal, but this is something that is compatible with multiple possible way of accessing the system.
Yes, that was kind of and this was the irony of FujiNet was that it started out as a way to solve the connectivity problem for the Atari side because the Atari didn't have a very good solution for connecting to this thing in the first place. So it just expanded its scope a lot more.
Okay, I was not aware about this part of the story. Okay.
So FujiNet's scope has expanded quite considerably, but that's where it started. And so let's see. So I know he's still connected here. If I take and pull away. So we can see Jacob D right there.
I'm logged in still.
And I can see here, we have guest being currently playing checkers.
It could be also trace of me being earlier because but now I logged off officially, so it should not be me.
Oh, well.
And the ID on the right, what was it? The EM?
The amount of memory used, the number of words of memory being used.
Okay, so me doing nothing uses 1,000 words. Okay.
Yeah, because the menu is being loaded. So there.
Yeah. No.
Okay. So if I take, for example, and I'm going to do something here. I'm going to use a feature of the system. Anybody can use this particular feature. If you do Control T, that's the term, and these are terminal functions, and there are all sorts of terminal functions. You do help, you can take a look and say, okay, what command? Let's say term. There's all sorts of crazy stuff that you can do. And it will take and overlay this so you can use it over here with your system here as you do things. But let's do term talk.
Term talk, admin as shown on.
Now you can hit Control T to term and then type talk.
Control T, what term? Talk. So talk and then
Hit return. Or hit next. Yep. So now.
And it's showing live here.
Yep. So now we're chatting and it's overlaying this. Yep. And we're overlaying this over what he's seeing, and it's being overlaid over on what I'm seeing. But I'm going to take this up a notch. You see right here, there is a function called Shift Lab for monitor mode. Monitor mode is quite literally the ability to share my screen and so he can see what I'm doing.
So we are entering the area of using Zoom, yep, in 1976.
Mm-hmm. So now I'm in monitor mode, and if I refresh the screen, you'll see that he can see what I'm seeing here, and he should see me here in the author mode.
Okay, so the idea is, in this case, to share the screen just as a teacher. The teacher screen to monitor what the students are doing, yep, or showing them what to do. Exactly. The idea.
Yes. And in my case here, what I'm literally showing here is the development environment. I actually started work on kind of a little Tetris game here, and you can see various things that we're doing, for example.
But you took over the control, or I still have some kind of control?
I took over, you're looking at my console right here. And if you type, I can see you type as chatting. So you can ask questions. Okay, so I can, and then I can answer by pressing.
We are missing just one thing: the voice passing there and back.
Yeah,
to the terminal. But this is the text for
But this is the text portion. Now you can actually.
The only thing you can say, geez, they really did a lot of stuff that came to the regular use, 30, 40 years later.
Yes, exactly. And not only that, you can even take this further because the screen sharing functionality can scale out to thousands of users because there's a conferencing function as well.
Okay. So we go to the, application level of webinars and stuff like this.
Yes, or having meetings, that sort of thing. And that was kind of the point. So let's say, the system itself was documented so unbelievably well. It's unbelievable. Like, say, for example, right
here. For the scale of final usage.
Yes.
But it came, that's a very important thing, why it was done so this way, because it came from the university and education. I don't know. Yes, you can see on my screen that all this stuff is showing up, of course, with limitation of the quality of the video and the image available on 8-bit Atari. But that's something really, hard to imagine that it just worked like this. But it's the university guys that were really fighting with it, trying to not only write the software like you are doing in every company I'm working also for in a software house, so I know how it is in a multi-language company, but still this is something that they really concentrated to make it useful in future. That's why the documentation is so well prepared, which is opposite of typical software solution that is created now, that first you need the functionality and then if you've got time, you will have the documentation. They did it probably the correct way.
Yeah, there was so much time and effort put into trying to show how this system, works and how to write things for this system.
But there is always a question: did they earn any kind of money from this system? Because it was sold later on multiple times, and I don't know if there was any significant income coming into it. But they were selling it at the access was sold at the premium cost, and also the equipment. I don't know if the equipment paid for itself or not, but it was subsidized by university and schools. And
Yes.
I suppose it were the poorest schools, but it was really, expensive solution.
It was the success. Yes, it had a modest success. Not to the degrees and the scales that we think of today.
Yeah, it wasn't Windows popular, yeah.
Yes, but it was a success. It had a lot of different installations, and at the peak of Plato's use in the mid 1980s, there were approximately 50,000 simultaneous users of the system spread across roughly a dozen systems. So this is really an interesting time capsule here. One of the reasons I really got into this was because it had some serious Indiana Jones moments, because there is such a huge treasure trove of data and information that is stored underneath the system, not just in things like the catalogs, but in all of the code that runs underneath the system too, that can be studied and analyzed to see how they implemented things. Oh, I mean, by the way,
just everybody can look around in the background in the camera. I'm still showing exactly the screen sharing, and it's live updating when you are showing it all the time through Atari terminal, and it works without any kind of error.
Yeah. It's here we have what Plato called Plato Notes, and if the term notes sounds familiar, if you think perhaps Lotus Notes, yes, Lotus Notes descended from this. Notes first had its life on Plato, written by an undergraduate student named Bill Woolley in 1973. And it's the first example of a public forum type system. You can look, you can read notes, you can reply to notes, you have threads, that sort of thing. Definitely in its own little world here, but
Okay, the question in the style of Kaz, so our main historian, is how did you get into Plato in this case? You personally?
I had known about Plato for many, many years, and I was fortunate enough to use the Plato cartridge when it first came out through the MicroPlato service. But as quickly as I got the cartridge and I used the service was taken down. So didn't get to use it that much, but I was already blown away, because even at that particular...
So it was in 90s, yep? Or earlier?
Mid-80s, 1980.
Mid-80s, okay, because I'm looking from the perspective of, Poland, so it would be mid-90s or beginning, but it was okay.
So I remember all of this, and it came back onto my radar through a number of different blog posts and different things that just people talking about it, people posting about it. I found out about the other extant system in my case, which was CyberOne, and I went and I got an account on CyberOne, and so I looked around on CyberOne. This is basically where all the Plato expatriates went. It's the other system.
Mm-hmm.
So hold on a second. Come on. And There we go. So they don't have a menu system. The menu system that Errata has, I wrote on my own in Tutor for our system. Most of the people that use these systems, they literally just use the author system here. So I found out about CyberOne in 2005 and got myself an account on the system and started using it. If we actually take, and let me just kill this here, bang, that one.
No, it's trying to steal the focus. Yeah,
It's trying to steal focus.
The worst thing you can do to any kind of user and thing. It's interesting how my terminal will react on you just killing it. It just
Sorry,
went empty.
it should have dropped you back into your own session. So if you hit Control D, it should refresh.
Monitor mode ended. You have been returned to your previous state. Okay.
Yes. Okay, so that's fine. And you can see right here, right now at this particular point, CyberOne is a lot more popular for sure. They currently have 36 users that are active on the system right now at this particular point in time. But found out about CyberOne. CyberOne's a lot older here, started participating in their communities there. And I had been hearing about through them this book that was being written by an author named Brian Deere called The Friendly Orange Glow, referring to the Plato terminal itself. And it was a book that was supposed to be about the Plato community. When it came out, I read the book, was absolutely enamored with it. And right at about that time, there was an effort by a group of people to basically take the Plato source code as it had been packaged for CyberOne and make a version that could be deployed for the purposes of study and run on your own system for the purposes of study. I asked for a copy of it, got a copy of it, and figured out how to take and deploy it using not only the instructions that they gave me, but read through all the systems administration modes. I've had to learn how to administer a supercomputer and started building this thing. And as I was putting this thing together, really got into the development environment. I was already familiar with it from CyberOne and started writing the bits and pieces of the code that would eventually become Errata Online. And finally, on March 31st, 2018, I took and deployed it for public use. And it's been up ever since.
Oh, okay. Could you just explain how did you get? Where did you get the data? You know, the original of all those lessons and all this information, and what is in fact copyright status?
Is currently the current copyright holder is a company called vCampus, and CyberOne got an agreement with vCampus to unlock all of that data. To be distributed in a form which they called the Cybus Distribution Kit. And that is a distribution kit that you can download, that you can grab, that has a complete Cybus system ready to run that you can use in the DT Cyber emulator to actually run the system.
Okay, originally it was just a direct ownership of this company, of the descendants of the company that originally have it. So it's fantastic that they gave it back to the public, in fact.
Yes.
First, you really need hardcore knowledge to be able to use it anyhow, because it's not the text form. You can just publish as a book. It must be in this interactive form. And the second thing is, otherwise it would be just completely lost. And taking into account how much effort was put not only to create the system, but to create those lessons and the thousands of pieces of information there, it would be a really big loss to the all the retro community and in general public if we made it more popular at some point.
Yes. Absolutely. And that's part of the driving force of what we're trying to do here is we're trying to take and preserve these communities, these archipelagos of sorts, so that people can go to them. One of the most amazing things about digital archaeology is that the artifacts themselves can be used. You cannot say the same thing about just about any other type of archaeology because especially because so much of the artifacts in the other disciplines of archaeology are brittle and prone to falling apart.
Oh, it's hard to use lead pipes from Roman Empire period. Yeah, of course, it would be even dangerous. But that's but very important thing. It's not only that it's usable and you can use it, but this particular case contains really useful data that can be used in regular education. Of course, a very specific kind of education that also gets into this archaeology of this equipment from the time. But what I wanted to say is the quicker you'll be in putting it back online in any kind of form, it's better because the more time passes from the time it was really used, it will be harder to put it back into any kind of use because I don't know, there was a story that 8-inch discs and a lot of data that was collected during the Apollo missions were completely lost, even with the footage done even saved in digital form. Maybe not the footage, but the information, because
all the containers of that information kept getting reused over and over, and videotape is especially prone to this.
I would say nobody's using video tapes of this kind anymore. But moreover, the equipment that is required to read it, I don't know. Curious Mark shows it. He managed to read some data that was created and saved on 8-bit discs, 8-inch discs. It's something
I've done that. I've done that very exercise specifically on 3740 format IBM discs. Thank God that was even the nice thing about 8-inch discs. That's you don't really see on any of the other formats. Is that very early on IBM established a data format because that whole form factor came from IBM, and the first widespread use of that form was in the 3740 key punch input systems, and the disk format, the layout of the sectors and how those things were laid out was something that was carried forward and everybody just used. So if you had an 8-inch disk,
so the physical format, of course, the logical later on is completely different story how to interpret this information.
It's the thing is if you're pulling data from a 3740, it's really easy to read. There's not much to it. You dump the sectors and then you figure out what you want to use with it, especially because with the 3740 key punch systems, you're literally taking the data that's on raw punch cards and in a fixed format, and you're just treating the disk as a stack of punch cards, quite literally.
Oh, that's something I had no idea. And what is really important, that the density of the information of the magnetic surface is so low that it can survive 40-50 years if kept in not very rough conditions.
Every 8-inch disk I have ever tried to read has basically read without problem. Let's put it that way.
Given that your hardware is, still working fine, of course.
As long as your hardware is functioning as it's supposed to, the likelihood of bit rot from an 8-inch disk is extremely low.
Yeah, and I have to tell you that the 1,000 discs I've got here in this boxes here, at least 99%. It's completely, much lower quality of drives, everything. They are still readable without a lot of problems until they are abused, or, for example, the drive that was used originally to write it had some issues or was just broken.
And it's quite literally a spatial problem too, because the failure rate goes up the smaller the disk gets.
Yeah. But I have had no issues with 3.5-inch discs.
So. Anyway, with that, I actually need to go, but I had a fantastic time taking and at least showing you here. There's a whole lot more to FujiNet here. It's kind of interesting that we kind of got off on this.
I'm interested in Plato because I just read about it, heard some things, and I had no idea that I will just you will be here and I will be able to talk with you about this particular thing that was very interesting for me. And now I can just try to fight with it and try to recognize and try to show it to people in Poland what it is, what it was, and what it is now again.
Like I said, I had if I look here, I'm just going to see if I do just a search for errata online, you can see demonstrations of how it works here, how how this works, and there are different. Each time that I gave a talk, those got recorded as well.
VCF is a very source information, and I think one of the VCF things was the point I heard about it and started to slightly dig. It's not what a very deep dig, as you can see, but yeah.
Mm-hmm. And there are other talks as well, especially for programming FujiNet here. The Atari of all the FujiNets, the one that has the most mature programming ecosystem around it is the Atari. It's the original one, but I literally tried to make it as easy as I possibly could to take and program and do network. Look right here. I'm using an open command here to open a TCP connection.
Okay, just one question. We will find information probably here. But somebody asked, okay, I just need to download the JSON from my HTTP server. And as I understand, you can do it even in BASIC.
Yes, you can. There is, like, say, for example, let me see if my Atari environment will work as expected here.
Maybe I think I would just invite you to do some 2 or 3 example sessions with even programming in Atari Basic. I would just do something simple.
Let me see if I can do, because I'll load I'll see if I can load if my system will behave here, we'll take and load Mastodon. And this is another thing here too. You'll notice I literally started up a copy of Altera that's running a copy of FujiNet PC, and it's running an emulated FujiNet.
That's fantastic thing, because there is a problem that many people do create new extensions to Atari, and then there is a problem with somebody trying to implement it in the emulators, and having it already in Altera, or I don't know if Atari 800 also has this extension. This is something really fantastic, because let's be frank, not many people really have real deal devices with them available for this kind of modifications. And moreover, you have to invest some not only time, space, place to hold it, but also to buy this equipment.
So I'll end with this. We'll boot an auto-run disk here that has the in device handler. This adds a new device to your system in : that gives you access to the FujiNet network device. And I need to switch my system profile or put a BASIC cartridge in. Either way, hold on a second.
You have to add it, and there's one cartridge in this Midas, so you could just enable it if it's already there.
Yes, but I forgot. I was doing some compatibility testing, so I had this guy in Atari 800 mode. Hold on. But there we go. This should work now. All right. So this is loaded here. It's loaded an end device. And so if I go ahead now and look at this particular example right here, this fits on one screen. This is everything you need to take and let me switch my input again. This is everything that you need to open a connection to a Mastodon server.
Mm-hmm.
Switch the mode to JSON, parse the JSON that comes in, and ask for specific parts of that JSON. But in this case, the display name, the created at timestamp, and the content of that post.
Excuse me, is the server directly the Mastodon server, or is it some kind of proxy? Yeah. Oh.
No, it's you're talking directly to a Mastodon server. If you look at the API, you'll literally see oldbytes.space/API v1 timelines, public and limit 1. So I only get one post because I'm only interested in the latest post.
There's fantastic connection of very old technology from end of 70s, like those machines, and then you are connecting through FujiNet, so just a new invention, into Mastodon. That is side invention of Elon Musk just a moment ago. In fact, of course, Mastodon was created before, but
I realized. Oh, sorry, I need to make one little adjustment. I realized I'm on the 800 again, and I accidentally shifted into the European character set. Let me get rid of line 2 there. And we can see right there, it pulled that JSON down, the FujiNet parsed it, and I asked for 3 pieces of information right there. It'll wait 30 seconds and it'll do it again.
And using Atari Basic for it. Let's be frank, this is piece of crap Basic. Okay, better than the one on Commodore, but still. And you can do it with what's the name? Original functionalities of Atari 8-bit that allows you to create new devices and connect it through SIO and so on. Jeez, this is mind-boggling.
This is like using files. Is it possible to do a sort of streaming from?
What you call streaming in this case?
Yeah, be more specific.
Yeah. So here we can open a sort of remote file. Yes,
this is like a REST call.
Yes, but if it's not, would it be possible that it's not like a finite file, but it's something which is being
We are talking about WebSocket.
Yes.
So if you open WebSocket, do we have support for WebSockets here? Don't tell me.
We the bits and pieces are there. I just need to make a protocol adapter for them.
Exactly, but and you need to this protocol adapter, but you cannot write it in BASIC, I think.
Well, no, that's the other side of it. So for each one of there's the Atari side, but there's also the firmware side of things as well, and we have protocol adapters for
in fact, you can try to handle WebSocket from BASIC, but you would have to, you would lose a lot of time to support this WebSocket. But because you could do it on TCP level, yeah.
That's the thing. It's all I would literally need to do if someone really wants WebSockets, I can take and make an adapter for them. It's not that big of a deal. Or others can make them.
And then you could just order through XCO command request to create this WebSocket, and it would try to hold it in memory.
Yes.
You would just read the data, with for command or whatever.
It will take care of all of the protocol details. So right now we have protocol. These are the different protocol adapters that we have: HTTP, HTTPS, SMB, SSH. Yes, you can do SSH connections, TCP, UDP. And for each one of these, what this literally does is it takes care of all of the gruesome details of handling all of the protocol interactions and turning that into a nice, clean protocol connection for the Atari.
Otherwise, you would need to fight with it on Atari itself. It would be ineffective, slow, and cumbersome. And you lose a lot of CPU cycles to just keep it running accordingly.
We're using the big honking microcontroller sitting on the FujiNet here,
which is
a lot of heavy,
few thousand times faster than Atari. Yeah.
Yes. And because of that, we can do things like open up SSH connections and use them.
I saw some examples you did in Forth.
Yep.
Was it only like basics or I mean?
I wanted to show that it could be used. I wanted to show that it could be used pretty much from anything, because at the end of
the language that allows you to speak to new devices. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean. At the end of the day, for the Atari, what you're doing is you're talking SIO. You're making SIO requests, and depending on which device you send to, those different devices do different things. You have the 8 devices for the disk. You have a device for the printer. You have a device for the virtual modem. You have a device for the CPM. You have a device for, and you have 4 devices for network, and so on and so on. So all you really have to do in the target language that you deal with, you just need to make an SIO packet. That's all you have to do. You just set up your DCB, you call SIOV, done.
And in many languages, or the things you are coding, it's already there, or you just have to add it, and then of course you have to form the request.
And then, of course, in languages like Fast Basic, we added FujiNet commands. So there you go.
So we can already start creating simple games that use them.
I want to see entries into NoMAM and the 10-liner basic contest that use FujiNet. Period.
Okay, let's make it more popular in Poland in this case. that's the area we can of expertise we've got here.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Let me take and we'll flip here. We'll reset. Let me do a cold reset here. The other aspect too is that we're starting to build platforms so that we can take and bring things and people together. One of those things is, for example, oh, this is still the old config, so I'm going to have to go to it. Let me go. I need to update the config on this machine. No big deal. On all the recent builds, there's an L command in config that literally takes you straight in here. I just haven't updated this guy. I just realized. Oops. So let's boot into it. And what we literally have right here, fellas, is the game lobby. And these are the games that we currently have running with the different rooms that are available. Right now, the game that we're kind of building and testing out is 5-card stud. And you can see these different rooms, each with a different number of bots and people that you can take and connect to. Of course, there's a chat system down below that updates as well dynamically, but we'll take and go into one of the games right here. We'll say go into 5-card stud. Oop. What's going on? What did I do? Or not. Shit. Okay, never mind. I broke something. So on this machine here, I can't show it here, but that's okay. There's a video for it, the FujiNet game lobby. Shit. Sorry. I broke something.
Shift happens.
Active development, but yeah.
That's we're all living in.
Yeah, sorry. So I need to go too, guys. So
okay, but it was fantastic. I can tell you that I completely had no idea. I did not expect to have you here and to talk about Plato.
I saw the post.
Yeah.
So, okay.
Yeah, fantastic. I'm really happy. I will have problems with falling asleep in a moment, but yeah, I think this is very good summary. We have to divide the whole recording in two if the recording is still going. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it should be.
It should be. There is information that is going. No, it's not. I don't know. Where's the list of
recording in progress still?
Recording in progress, because I don't have this mentioned. Okay. Anyway, we will divide it into two pieces. The Polish, because the original idea of this meeting was I bought FujiNet. I have no idea what shall I do with it. And also the cassette adapter that will be left for another meeting. But yeah, it's so interesting.
Emulation too, by the way.
Yeah, but this one can emulate and can simulate, or just can support Turbo. any kind of turbo things.
All of you guys and your crazy turbo formats. My
Yes,
God.
1, 2, no, there are 20.
Yeah. I know. We tried to figure them all out and support them all, and
we've got support for many of those turbos, and we can just merge this knowledge if it will be needed. I'm not a specialist, and I wanted to know how it works. That's why I wanted to just load it. And remember, some of those turbo has a loader, are based on the loader that you load from the cassette, and other things are based on the cartridge you connect, and others are connected through the joystick port, and so on. So it's not easy to support it just like that. There is a lot of magic, and people were really generating new, completely unknown ideas about it, and I wanted just to dig into it and try to find out and just play with turbo, because I had only the cassette player, which was not even the original Atari thing, but it was independent audio device connected through special interface. And then I switched directly to disk. So I didn't have any kind of experience with running those turbo modes. I never needed it. But yeah, I want to just now try to see how it works and experience it. This was the idea of this experience FujiNet, because just to know it. But now we run into really interesting session. Thank you so much.
Only scratching because we've spent years literally wondering, can we make it do this? Yes. Can we make it do this? Yes. And we just kept adding. We just kept doing stuff. So
it's the same like it happened with many other projects, but this one is much broader because there is AVG card for 8 bits that originally was to simulate cartridge. Then it simulates the additional SIO
connector. Yep.
Yes. Then it expands. Okay, can you expand memory? Yes, there is BBI interface, and so on, so on. And this is another example of this one, but this is limited to one machine. FujiNet is completely different window to the whole world of possibilities. So the general idea is different. Then you've got all those extensions.
And and as far as where we're wanting to go, we're being very methodical and with what we're with how we're trying to take and deal with all these platforms. We're trying to solve the major problems which will allow us to take and go on to all of these different platforms. The big example right now is the generic bus interface. It's taken the better part of a year and a half, starting from scratch, to figure out how to take and build a generic bus interface for the CSP32 using nothing but 7400 logic, and to take and work out all of the details. And
the idea is just to reiterate to anybody who has no idea what is 7400 logic. It's the basic building blocks of gates that you just have in nearly every computer from the era. Some glue logic and stuff like this is created with those basic building blocks.
And if we can, basically the thinking was, if we can take and make this work really well in 7400 logic, we can basically move it to anything. We can turn it into Verilog. We can turn it into we can turn parts of it into GAL terms. We can turn it into we can move it to different logic designs and put this thing on everything, because the goal here is to put FujiNet everywhere, even on game consoles. Atari VCS.
The most important. It started with Plato, and you wanted to have this thing connected from the 8-bit Atari. Yep, and then it started to expand. That's something I had no idea. I had no connection between those two things in my mind before this meeting.
I don't think anybody did. No, I mean, okay. Just basically, it was really very simple. FujiNet happened because Moswald wanted a modem. That's all he wanted. So he took and did what everybody else did. He took an ESP32 and he put some level shifters in front of it and turned it into a serial device. And of course, he takes and sends me one of these. And in an amazing display of consistent forward thinking that Moswald always does, he's like, well, you know what? I'm not going to use the ESP01 like most everybody else is using. I'm going to use the big ESP12E, which is had all the IO connections out, and we had all the GPIOs exposed. And one day I'm sitting there just talking with him, and I just asked a very simple, very innocent question. I went, "Is the command pin hooked up?" And he said, "Yeah." Which GPIO port number is it? It's number 19. Okay. Huh. Wonder if I can make this thing act like a disk drive. And literally 2 weeks after that, we booted Jumpman over. We booted Jumpman from a cloud server over at DigitalOcean, roughly 1,000 miles away, which you could think of this visually as the world's longest SIO cable ever.
Exactly. Extension of Joe DeClear, original idea to the unlimited.
We booted Jumpman, and then we just looked at each other at what had just happened, and we're just completely agape and like, okay, what else can we do? Next thing we know, here comes Jeff Pietmeyer, another one of my friends. He's a senior microwave design engineer over at NASA Goddard. And he just does all sorts of weird stuff in his spare time. And he's like, he was looking for something to do. And he's like, oh, you guys are working on something cool. Let's see if I can add printer support. So he goes off and he goes off and we ultimately winds up building this, PDF rasterizer that can simulate all these Atari printers. And we just kind of folded that in. And it just kind of, the whole project just kind of mushroomed because people came in and, like I said, I built a tree fort. I built a giant tree house where kids could come and people could come in and hack on different things, and maybe they work on their thing, and when they're done, they leave, and but I don't see them again, or maybe they stick around. It just kind of happens. But regardless of which, the thing that's being worked on is FujiNet, and this thing that we're seeing what we can bend in different directions, and it's rather interesting. I'll post a link to the Discord here, so you can see kind of what's going on here, and people can take and participate in the discussions, and you'll see that there's stuff happening in so many different directions, all at the same time.
Yeah, but just to tell you how it came to the fact that I decided to buy one. It was me watching those videos from VCF, and Joe DeQueer was talking yet again on some stories from the time, but he mentioned this FujiNet. I already knew that it exists, but he said that it is exactly what you are trying to describe now, and it is that it gives all those opportunities, and it's from the original author, co-author of Atari computers and also SEO interface, that it's so new, powerful thing that I decided, okay, let me just pull the trigger on it and try to see what it is.
I'm glad you did, and you're just scratching the surface here. But what's possible is, we've only just started to really see what's possible, and the number of platforms that we're jumping to, it's just it's multiplying every day.
It's not only possibilities, but that it's simple to use if you want just the basics.
If all you want to do is load games off of the internet, there you go. It works.
I'm talking now. That's the part that I already took for granted and obvious. I'm talking about using it in programming, but you can just use 2 XIO commands in Atari Basic, and you are done, of course, with loading all the drivers first. But that's something that makes me, if it's shown to people that are writing stuff, I think that it won't take much time to have first, I don't know, even games that will be of nice quality, because their games are still being created all the time for this machine. The German user group Abbook is, for example, creating and popularizing games, and I see completely no point why they shouldn't start showing up games and popularizing games that are FujiNet based.
Yep, it's why I started writing articles in Abbook, basically showing how to do that, how to take and write a game of Reversi, how to take and do the Mastodon post that you saw there actually was an article in Abbook, and actually talking about some of the crazy things that are going on. If you go over to in the Discord and you go to the Anode channel, Bocciano And a number of very intrepid Polish hackers right now are creating what I can only describe as a piece of software that they call Anode, which is a massive, massive, massive networked platform on top of this thing. They're basically they're throwing the kitchen sink at it. I can't even describe. They just added a package manager yesterday. So I mean, good God, it's a desktop. It's just they're just trying all these crazy things to see what they can do with it. See if I can find a good picture of this goofy thing. Yeah, all right. So copy image. Can I paste an image into the chat? Yes, I can.
Yes, you should be able to.
There. I mean, just look at that. Like, what the hell? These guys are trying. This is a giant test bed for God knows what.
Okay. It means that there is some research for me to go through to just find a set of information. And to write some maybe even articles for Atari Online PO, because this is something, opens new worlds, not even worlds.
And that's what I had hoped.
I have two quick questions to you, Thomas.
No,
go on.
Maybe. What? Sorry.
Yes. First question. Currently, Fujinet is connected to Atari through SIO port, yeah?
Yes, you're going to ask the PBI question, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly. Is there a plan for a new device? Faster one?
If somebody wants to take and do the legwork to make that happen, I will do everything I can to make sure that person and/or team gets what they need to make it happen.
Okay. Clear statement. I guess the second one would have the same answer because, well, it's similar. Fujinet for Atari ST. I guess the answer is the same.
Well, it's pretty much the same answer. Now there is one guy who's been slowly working on trying to do it. We experimented through the ASCI port, for example, and part of the work that we're doing for like the generic bus interface is actually helping out here because the ESP32 by itself doesn't have all the bits and pieces that it needs to talk to more complex parallel buses. So one of the things that we're looking at is we've got two different tracks happening at the same time to investigate two parallel ideas. The first is the generic bus interface using 7400 logic, and the other is to investigate using a device like the RP2040, the Pico, as a bus front end, because it is fast enough to take and do parallel bus transactions and the like, and to basically use a high-speed SPI or UART link between the ESP32 and the RP2040 to form a high-speed bus interface so we can deal with those particular systems as well. Because yes, we want to take and move on to these systems. And here's an important point of the machines that we're moving on to and why we're moving on to them. The machines that we're explicitly trying to target are machines that are not able to run a TCP/IP stack themselves, or much less a TCP/IP stack that has TLS, that has SSL, all that stuff to handle the modern internet. So we're trying to take and provide an on-ramp for those to work. So that's why we're not only targeting the 8-bit machines and the game consoles, but early 16-bit machines like the original IBM 5150 PC, the original Apple Macintosh, which the original Apple Macintosh is actually, they're doing fantastic with their bring up as well. It connects through the floppy port, and they've managed to prove that it will work. And that's the 16-bit machines that we're working on here are basically the machines that we're talking about here, targeting, that are just not fast enough to run a modern TCP stack. If you look in the Discord, you'll find a whole lot of different platforms. And what we really need from all of these are people that are willing to just take and sit down and put in the work, put in the experimentation, try to figure out the problems. And we're all here because we're trying to help each other and to learn from each other to take and to do these things. This is like I said, it's a giant Treefork / think tank / just lab.
Yeah, you just need people that know particular platform and all the details, and also want to learn from you and from the documentation how to use the FujiNet and how to implement the details. It's always like this, but there is a possibility.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you for this great device.
You're welcome.
It's really
the fact that you guys are using the fact that you're using them, the fact that you guys are using them, and that you're using them and that you're trying to do useful things with them. That makes
I'm trying to use it. Now I have problem with my 800 XL because there are some failures, memory failures, etc. Therefore, at that moment,
you can continue in the emulator. That's the most important thing.
Yep, you can.
I heard, never tried. I have to, go through the manual and to connect somehow the device.
Okay.
I don't know how, but I will try.
Come to the Discord. This is why one of the reasons the Discord functions as both user support and developer support. So it's both. The community is small enough that we can mix the user and developer support, and there's not a problem. So
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Thank you so much for this introduction, in fact, to two things. The one that was really interesting for me, so the Plato story and the FujiNet itself. So, I hope we will be able to organize another, maybe more organized meeting in the future.
Please let me know. I'm more than happy to take and do these. Like I told you, I found this post here and I just kind of went, okay, I'll just wander on by.
And the time was correct. Okay, for you and also for us here. Okay.
Yeah. All right.
Thank you so much again.
You're welcome, sir. See you later.
See you
later.
Thank you.